Jake Morrison opened his eyes slowly. His head hurt badly and everything looked blurry. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy and weak. Where was he? What happened? The last thing he remembered was the explosion. His ship, the Valiant, had been fighting against enemy forces. There were bright flashes everywhere. People screaming, the hull breaking apart, then nothing but darkness. Now he was lying on something soft. A bed, maybe. The room around him was strange. The walls were dark and smooth, almost like polished stone. Soft lights glowed from somewhere he couldn't see. Everything looked expensive and old, like it belonged in a museum. Jake tried to sit up, but his muscles wouldn't cooperate. He managed to lift his head a little. That's when he saw her. A woman stood near the foot of the bed watching him. At least she looked like a woman. But something about her was different. Wrong somehow. Her skin was too pale, almost white like marble. Her eyes were red. Not bloodshot red, but actually red like two small flames burning in her face. She smiled at him. Her teeth were perfectly white and sharp. "You're finally awake," she said. Her voice was smooth and calm, like someone talking about the weather. "You were talking about me in your sleep." Jake's throat was dry. He tried to speak, but only a rough sound came out. The woman laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, but it made Jake's skin crawl anyway. Quite colorful descriptions, actually. Blood-drinking tyrant was my favorite, though I also enjoyed murderous witch and evil monster. She tilted her head slightly. "You humans have such creative insults." Jake finally found his voice. "Who are you?" "Where am I?" "I am Empress Valeria," she said simply. "And you are aboard my flagship. You've been unconscious for 3 days." Jake's mind raced. Empress Valeria. He knew that name. Every human soldier knew that name. She was the ruler of the Crimson Collective, the alien empire that had been destroying human colonies for the past 2 years. She was the enemy, the monster they were all fighting against. "My crew," Jake said, his voice getting stronger. "What happened to my crew?" "Most of them died when your ship exploded," Valeria said. She didn't sound happy or sad about it. She said it like she was reading from a report. "But I saved some. 23 survivors, including you. Why?"
Jake managed to pull himself up into a sitting position.
His head spun, but he stayed upright. "Why would you save any of us?" Valeria moved closer to the bed. Jake could see her more clearly now. She was tall, maybe 6 feet. She wore a long dark dress that looked like it was made from shadows. Her hair was black and hung down to her shoulders. "Because you interest me," she said. "Humans interest me. You're the first species in 300 years that has actually fought back against my empire. The first species that refuses to surrender even when it's logical to do so." She sat down in a chair near the bed. Her red eyes never left Jake's face. "Every other species we conquered understood when they were beaten," Valeria continued. "They saw our power and they gave up. But not humans. You fight until the very end. You blow up your own ships rather than let us capture them. You hide your families and send out desperate messages hoping someone will hear them. You die screaming our names in anger." She leaned forward slightly. "Why?" Jake stared at her. His hands were shaking, but he wasn't sure if it was from fear or anger. "Because we'd rather die free than live as your slaves." Valeria smiled again. "Yes, that's what I thought. But I want to understand it better. I want to understand you better." "I'm not telling you anything," Jake said firmly. "You can torture me if you want. I won't help you destroy my people." "Torture?" Valeria looked genuinely surprised. "Why would I torture you?" "That would damage your mind, make your thoughts unclear." "No, Lieutenant Morrison. I have something else in mind." She stood up and walked to a window. Jake hadn't noticed the window before. Through it, he could see stars moving past. They were traveling through space. "You will stay here with me," Valeria said. "You will eat, sleep, and recover your strength. And you will talk to me. Tell me about humans, about Earth, about why you fight the way you do. And if I refuse?" Valeria turned to look at him. Her expression was calm, but something cold flickered in her red eyes. "Then your 22 surviving crew members will be drained of their life energy and fed to my soldiers. They will die slowly and in great pain." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "You're a monster." "Perhaps," Valeria said. "But I'm a monster who is offering you a choice. Help me understand humanity and your people live. Refuse and they die. It's quite simple." She walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at him. "You should rest more. You're still weak. I'll have food brought to you. Real food, not the synthetic nutrients my people consume. I made sure we captured human supplies for you." Why do you care if I eat? Jake asked. Valeria's smile was mysterious now. Because, Lieutenant Morrison, you are the most interesting puzzle I've encountered in a very long time, and I always take care of my valuable possessions. The door slid open and she walked through. It closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Jake alone in the strange room. He lay back down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. His ship was destroyed. Most of his crew was dead. The rest were prisoners, and he was trapped on the enemy flagship with the most dangerous being in the galaxy. But he was alive. His remaining crew was alive. And as long as they were alive, there was hope. He just had to figure out how to use that hope. Jake closed his eyes. He could still hear Valeria's laugh in his mind. He could still see those burning red eyes. He had called her a monster in his sleep. But now, awake and facing her, he realized something terrifying. She wasn't just a monster. She was intelligent, curious, and patient. And that made her far more dangerous than any mindless beast could ever be. 2 weeks passed slowly for Jake. Every day felt like a strange dream he couldn't wake up from. The room he stayed in was comfortable, almost too comfortable. The bed was soft. The temperature was always perfect. Food appeared 3 times a day, brought by silent guards who looked similar to Valeria but less refined somehow. They never spoke to him. They just left the food and walked away. Jake spent his time trying to learn everything he could about the ship. The room had a small window and he watched the stars move past. He studied the guards when they came. He listened to the sounds of the ship around him. He was still a soldier even if he was a prisoner. On the 15th day, Valeria came back. She entered without knocking, carrying a small device in her hand. Jake was sitting on the bed and he stood up quickly when he saw her. "Sit," she said. It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't a request either. Jake stayed standing. "I want to see my crew." Valeria raised one eyebrow. "You're not in a position to make demands, Lieutenant." "Then I'm not in a position to help you either." They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Valeria smiled slightly. "Very well. You may see them. But first we talk. Sit." This time Jake sat. Valeria took the chair across from him and set the device on a small table between them. "This is a translator and recorder," she explained. "I want you to listen to something." She pressed a button and voices filled the room. Human voices. They were speaking quickly, urgently. Jake recognized military communication patterns. "This is Captain Lisa Barnes of the destroyer Phoenix. We've detected the Sanguinar fleet moving toward the colony at New Boston. Estimate 3 days until arrival. All civilian ships are evacuating now," another voice responded. "Phoenix, this is Admiral Hayes at Central Command. You are ordered to fall back. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Negative command. If we fall back, the evacuation ships will be caught. We're buying them time. Captain, you have 15 ships against their 200. This is suicide." "Then it's suicide, sir." Phoenix out, the recording ended. Valeria watched Jake's face carefully. "What happened?" Jake asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. "Captain Barnes and her fleet held position for 8 hours, Valeria said. "They destroyed 17 of my ships. Then they were wiped out completely. But the evacuation ships escaped. All 30,000 civilians survived." She leaned back in her chair. "Explain this to me." Captain Barnes knew she would die. Her crew knew they would die. Why didn't they retreat? Jake met her red eyes steadily. Because those 30,000 people mattered more than their own lives. But they're dead now. What good are dead soldiers? They're not just soldiers, Jake said. They're heroes. Their families will remember them. Their names will be honored. And those 30,000 people they saved will tell their children about the brave crews who died protecting them. Valeria looked puzzled. But the soldiers themselves won't know they're honored. They're dead. They gain nothing from this sacrifice. That's the point, Jake said. They didn't do it to gain something. They did it because it was right. Valeria was quiet for a moment. Then she pressed another button on the device. More voices played. This time it was a group of human prisoners somewhere on the ship. They were singing. Jake recognized the song. It was an old Earth song about home and hope. Your people sing when they're prisoners, Valeria said. They tell jokes. They try to keep each other's spirits up. My people have conquered 47 different species. None of them did this. They all accepted their fate quietly. But humans, she shook her head. Humans act like being captured is just a temporary inconvenience. Maybe because we believe it is, Jake said. Do you really think you'll escape? Do you think Earth will rescue you? I think that hope is stronger than despair. And as long as we have hope, we'll keep fighting. Valeria stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Softer somehow. I am over 3,000 years old, Lieutenant Morrison. I have ruled my empire for 2,000 years. In all that time, I have never met a species like yours. You're weak. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are so short that you barely have time to learn anything before you die. And yet, she turned to look at him, and yet you fight like you're the strongest beings in the galaxy. You plan like you have centuries to execute your strategies. You hope like you've never known defeat? Is that why you're keeping me here? Jake asked. To understand that? Partly. Valeria walked back to her chair but didn't sit. I'm going to make you an offer, Lieutenant. A real one this time. Jake waited. I want you to serve as my advisor on human tactics and psychology. You will attend my War Council meetings. You will explain human behavior to my generals. You will help me understand why you fight the way you do. So I can help you kill more humans? Never. If you refuse, Valeria said calmly, I will have your crew members brought to the feeding chambers. My soldiers need sustenance after all. Your people will serve that purpose instead. Jake felt rage building in his chest. You said you'd keep them alive. I said I'd keep them alive if you cooperated. This is cooperation. You help me, they live. You refuse, they die. Simple. Jake wanted to attack her. He wanted to wrap his hands around her pale throat and squeeze until she stopped breathing. But he knew it was useless. She was stronger than any human. The guards outside would kill him in seconds. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. I'll do it. But I want to see my crew now. Valeria smiled. Of course. Follow me. She led him through corridors that twisted and turned. The ship was massive, far larger than any human vessel. They passed dozens of Sanguinar crew members. All of them stopped to bow their heads when Valeria walked past. Finally, they reached a large chamber. Inside, Jake saw his surviving crew members. They were alive, but they looked thin and tired. When they saw Jake, several of them stood up quickly. Lieutenant, a woman rushed forward. It was Amy Chen, his tactical officer. You're alive. I'm fine, Jake said. He looked around at all of them. 22 faces stared back at him, full of hope and fear. Are you all okay? Have they hurt you? They feed us once a day, said Marcus Flynn, his engineer. The food isn't great, but it's edible. They haven't hurt us. Just keep us locked in here. Jake felt relief wash over him. They were alive. Thin and scared, but alive. Listen to me, he said quietly. I'm going to get us out of this. I don't know how yet, but I will. Until then, stay strong. Stay together. Don't give up hope. We won't, sir, Amy said firmly. The others nodded. Valeria's voice came from behind him. Your time is up, Lieutenant. Jake turned to face her. Thank you for letting me see them. Don't thank me, Valeria said. Remember our agreement. You help me, they live. You try anything foolish, they die. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Jake said. As they walked back through the corridors, Jake's mind was already working. He had agreed to help Valeria, but that didn't mean he had to help her win. Maybe, just maybe, he could use this position to find weaknesses in her empire, to learn things that could help Earth. It was a dangerous game, but it was the only game he had left to play. Jake's first War Council meeting was overwhelming. The chamber was enormous, with a high ceiling that seemed to disappear into darkness. A large table filled the center, and around it sat 12 Sanguinar generals. They all looked at Jake with those burning red eyes when he entered with Valeria. This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Valeria announced. He is human, and he will be advising us on human tactics. You will treat him with respect. One of the generals, a tall male with scars across his face, spoke up. My Empress, with respect, why do we need advice from a primitive species? We have been winning this war, have we? Valeria's voice was sharp. We lost 17 ships at New Boston. We lost an entire supply convoy at the Jupiter station. Our advance has been stopped for 3 months. Does this sound like winning to you, General Cade? The scarred general said nothing. Valeria gestured for Jake to sit. He took a seat near her at the head of the table. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. Let's begin, Valeria said. Show him the tactical display from the Battle of Europa Station. A holographic image appeared above the table. Jake watched as the battle played out in miniature. He saw the Sanguinar fleet advancing in perfect formation. He saw the human ships scattered across the field, seemingly disorganized. Then the humans attacked from 3 sides at once, targeting the command ships specifically. The Sanguinar formation broke apart. Ships collided with each other. In the confusion, the humans destroyed 5 capital ships and escaped before the Sanguinar could regroup. "Explain this," Valeria said to Jake. "Why did your fleet attack in such a chaotic pattern?" There was no logic to it. Jake studied the display. "There was logic. You just didn't see it because you expected us to fight like you do." "Explain." "Your ships moved in perfect formation," Jake said. "Every ship knew exactly where every other ship would be. That's your strength, but it's also your weakness. When we hit your command ships, nobody knew what to do next. They were waiting for orders." "And human ships don't wait for orders?" asked another general. "We do," Jake said. "But we also train every captain to think independently. When the plan fails, they make new plans on the spot. Your captains are too used to following the perfect strategy. When it breaks down, they freeze." The generals looked at each other. Some seemed angry. Others looked thoughtful. "This is foolish," General Cade said. "Chaos is not a strategy. It's just chaos." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But chaos is hard to predict. And if you can't predict what we'll do, you can't plan against it." Valeria smiled slightly. "Continue, Lieutenant. Tell them about the supply convoy." Jake spent the next hour explaining human tactics. He told them about how human commanders would sacrifice small ships to save big ones, how they would retreat from fights they couldn't win instead of dying gloriously, how they would use asteroids and planets as cover because they weren't ashamed to hide. The generals listened, and Jake could see some of them beginning to understand. But General Cade still looked skeptical. "These are the tactics of cowards," Cade said. "The Sanguinar do not hide. We do not retreat. We face our enemies with honor, and you die doing it," Jake said. "Honor doesn't mean much when you're dead." Cade stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You dare— Enough!" Valeria's single word froze everyone in place. "Sit down, General Cade. The human makes a valid point. Pride is not the same as wisdom." Cade sat, but Jake could feel the hatred radiating from him. Over the following weeks, Jake attended more meetings. He learned more about the Sanguinar than any human had ever known. He learned that they were an old species, maybe the oldest in the galaxy. They had been conquering other worlds for thousands of years, but he also learned their weaknesses. They were too set in their ways. They did everything the same way because that's how it had always been done. They couldn't adapt quickly because adaptation had never been necessary before. One evening, Valeria invited Jake to dine with her privately. He was surprised. Usually, she just had food sent to his room. Her private dining chamber was smaller than the war room, but just as elegant. A table was set with strange foods. Some looked familiar. Others were completely alien. "Sit," Valeria said. She was already seated at one end of the table. Jake sat at the other end. "What's the occasion? Can I not simply wish to speak with you outside of council meetings? You're the Empress. You can do whatever you want." Valeria picked up a glass of dark red liquid. Jake tried not to think about what it might be. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "Not about tactics or strategy. Tell me what it's like." Jake was surprised by the question. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What does it look like? What do humans do for pleasure? What is it like to live such a short life?" Jake thought for a moment. "Earth is beautiful. We have oceans and forests and mountains. We have cities made of glass and steel. When I was a kid, I used to sit on a hill near my house and watch the sunset. The sky would turn orange and pink and purple. We don't have sunsets on my homeworld," Valeria said quietly. "Our sun is red and it never fully sets. The sky is always the color of blood. That sounds depressing." "It is. I left my homeworld 2,000 years ago and rarely go back." She took a sip from her glass. "What else?" Jake told her about music, about movies and books and art, about sports and games and holidays. He told her about his family, about growing up on Earth, about joining the fleet because he wanted to explore the stars. Valeria listened to everything. She asked questions. She seemed genuinely interested in the smallest details. "Your people create so much," she said finally. "Art, music, stories. My people stopped creating things long ago. We perfected our technology and our society. We saw no need to create new things when the old things worked perfectly." "That sounds boring," Jake said. "It is." Valeria set down her glass. "Do you know why I really kept you alive, Lieutenant Morrison?" To understand human tactics, partly, but also because talking to you is the most interesting thing I've done in centuries. My generals are efficient and loyal, but they're predictable. They tell me what I expect to hear. You don't. I'm your prisoner, Jake said. I say what I think because I have nothing to lose. Perhaps. Valeria stood and walked to a window. Or perhaps you're just honest by nature. Another strange human trait. Jake stood too. Can I ask you something? You may ask. I may not answer. Why do you do this? Why conquer other worlds? What's the point? Valeria was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Jake had ever heard it. Because I wanted to bring order to chaos. When I was young, the galaxy was full of wars and conflicts. Species fought each other endlessly. I thought if one empire ruled everything, there would be peace. But now what? She turned to face him. In the dim light, her red eyes seemed almost sad. Now I wonder if I simply created a different kind of chaos. A dead, quiet chaos where nothing new ever happens. They stood there in silence. For a moment, Jake didn't see the terrifying Empress. He saw someone who was tired. Someone who had lived too long and seen too much. I should return to my room, Jake said finally. Yes. Valeria walked to the door and opened it. Guards waited outside. But Lieutenant? Thank you for the conversation. It was refreshing. As Jake walked back to his room with the guards, his mind was spinning. He had learned something important tonight. Valeria wasn't just a monster. She was lonely. And lonely people made mistakes. Maybe, just maybe, that was a weakness he could use. 3 months passed. Jake had learned the patterns of the ship. He knew when the guards changed shifts. He knew which corridors were busy and which were quiet. He knew where the escape shuttles were kept. More importantly, he had been secretly meeting with his crew. Valeria allowed him to visit them once a week now. During those visits, he passed information quietly. A whispered word here. A hand signal there. Amy and Marcus were smart. They understood what he was planning. They were going to escape. The opportunity came when the flagship stopped at a supply station. Jake had learned that the Sanguinar needed to refuel their ships with a special energy that they harvested from stars. The process took hours, and during that time, half the crew would be off the ship gathering supplies. Jake had mapped out a route from the prisoner chambers to the shuttle bay. It would be dangerous, but it was possible. On the night of the escape, Jake lay in his bed and waited. At midnight, the lights in his room dimmed automatically. He counted to 100, then got up quietly. The door was locked, but Jake had been watching the guards use the control panel for months. He had memorized the sequence. His hand shook as he pressed the buttons, but the door slid open. The corridor outside was empty. Jake moved quickly, keeping to the shadows. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He reached the prisoner chambers without being seen. Using the same code sequence, he opened the door. Inside, his crew was already awake and waiting. Is it time? Amy whispered. It's time, Jake confirmed. Stay quiet. Stay together. If we get separated, head for Shuttle Bay 3. It's our best chance. They move through the ship like ghosts. 23 people trying to be invisible. Jake led them through the maintenance corridors he had discovered. These passages were narrow and dark, but they were rarely used. They were halfway to the shuttle bay when the alarm went off. Red lights flashed throughout the ship. A loud siren wailed. Jake heard shouts in the distance. Run! He yelled. They abandoned stealth and ran. Behind them, Jake could hear guards shouting and running. The shuttle bay was close. So close they burst into the bay. 3 small shuttles sat waiting. Jake pointed at the nearest one. Everyone inside, now! His crew scrambled into the shuttle. Amy went straight to the pilot's seat and started the engines. Marcus worked on the bay door controls. Come on. Marcus muttered as his fingers flew over the panel. The bay doors started to open. Space appeared beyond them, black and infinite. They were going to make it. Then Valeria stepped into the shuttle bay. She was alone. No guards followed her. She just stood there, watching them with those burning red eyes. Stop, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the entire bay. Jake stood at the shuttle entrance. His crew was inside, ready to go. All he had to do was step inside and close the door. But something made him pause. We're leaving, Jake said. You can't stop all of us. I could kill all of you in seconds, Valeria replied calmly. You know this. Then why haven't you? Valeria walked closer. She moved with that strange grace that all Sanguinar had, like she was floating instead of walking. She stopped a few feet from Jake. "Because I knew you were planning this," she said. "I've known for weeks. I let you plan. I let you hope. I wanted to see what you would do with your freedom." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "You knew? I'm 3,000 years old, Lieutenant. Did you really think you could hide your intentions from me? I've seen 1,000 escape attempts. I knew what you were doing before you knew yourself." "Then this was all a game to you," Jake said bitterly. "You were playing with us?" "No." Valeria's expression changed. For the first time since Jake had met her, she looked uncertain. "I was testing a theory." "What theory?" "That humans deserve to be more than just another conquered species." Jake stared at her. Behind him, he heard Amy starting the shuttle engines. The sound filled the bay with a low hum. "What are you talking about?" Jake asked. Valeria looked past him at the shuttle, at all the human faces watching from inside. Then she looked back at Jake. "In 3,000 years, I've conquered 47 species. I've seen civilizations rise and fall. I've watched entire worlds burn, and in all that time, nothing has changed. Every species is the same. They fight, they lose, they surrender. The pattern never varies." She stepped closer. "But then I met you. I met humans. And for the first time in a very long time, something was different. You don't follow the pattern. You break it. You make me question things I've believed for millennia." "I still don't understand," Jake said. "I'm offering you a choice," Valeria said. "A real choice, not a trick. You can leave right now. Take your crew and go. I won't stop you. I won't chase you. You have my word. Why would you do that?" "Because I want to see if you'll choose something different. Something no other species has ever chosen." Jake's mind raced. This had to be a trick. It had to be. "And if we leave? What happens to the rest of the human prisoners on your other ships?" "They remain prisoners, so it's a trade. Our freedom for their imprisonment." "No," Valeria said. "That's not what I'm offering. I'm offering you a chance to save them all." She held out her hand. In her palm was a small data device. "On this device is all the information about every human prisoner in my empire. Where they are, how many guards watch them, when the ships are vulnerable, everything you would need to plan rescues. Why would you give this to us?" "Because I'm making you a different proposal. Go back to Earth. Show your leaders this information, but also show them something else." She pulled out a second device. "This contains a proposal for a ceasefire. Not a surrender. Not a treaty. Just a pause in the fighting. A chance for both our people to talk instead of kill." Jake took both devices. They felt heavy in his hands. "And what do you want in return?" "I want you to come back," Valeria said simply. "Deliver my message. Help your people free the prisoners. But then come back here and bring me something." "Bring you what?" "Proof that humanity deserves to be treated as equals instead of conquered subjects. Show me why your species is worth preserving. Convince me that there's a better way than the empire I've built." Jake looked at the devices in his hands. Then he looked at Valeria. Her red eyes burned with something he hadn't seen before. Was it hope? Was the ancient Empress actually hoping that he would prove her wrong? "If I do this," Jake said slowly, "if I go back and then return, how do I know you won't just capture me again?" "You don't," Valeria said. "You'll have to trust me. Just as I'm trusting you right now with information that could cripple my empire." "Trust," Jake repeated. "Between enemies. Or between two people who are tired of being enemies." Valeria stepped back. "Decide, Lieutenant Morrison. Leave and never look back, or leave with the chance to change everything. But decide now. My generals will be here soon and they won't be as understanding as I am." Jake turned and looked at his crew. Amy was watching him from the pilot's seat. Marcus and the others stared with wide eyes. They all waited for his decision. He turned back to Valeria. "I'll go. I'll deliver your message, and I'll come back with your answer. But if this is a trick, if you hurt any more humans while I'm gone, then you'll have the information to hurt me back." Valeria interrupted. "That's the point. I'm giving you the power to damage my empire because I want to see if you'll choose conversation over destruction." Jake nodded slowly. "All right. We have a deal." "Then go," Valeria said. "Before I change my mind." Jake climbed into the shuttle and sealed the door. Amy immediately fired the engines. The shuttle lifted off the deck and shot out through the open bay doors into space. As they flew away from the massive flagship, Jake looked back through the window. He could see Valeria standing alone in the shuttle bay watching them go. Even from this distance, he could see the glow of her red eyes. "Sir," Amy said quietly. "Did that really just happen?" "I think so," Jake replied. "But I'm not sure I believe it myself." Marcus came forward and looked at the data devices in Jake's hands. "What's on those?" "Either our salvation," Jake said, "or our doom. Maybe both." The shuttle's engines pushed them farther from the flagship, toward the distant points of light where human space waited. Jake clutched the devices tightly and wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or if something remarkable had just begun. The return to Earth took 6 days. 6 days of nervous silence broken only by occasional conversation. Jake's crew couldn't quite believe they were free. Neither could Jake. When they finally entered Earth's solar system, they were immediately surrounded by human warships. The radio crackled with urgent voices demanding identification. Jake transmitted his codes and explained who they were. The suspicion in the voices told him everything he needed to know. Everyone thought this was some kind of trick. They were escorted to the main military base on Mars. Jake was separated from his crew and brought to a conference room. 5 hours later, he sat across from Admiral Frank Hayes and 3 other high-ranking officers. "Let me get this straight," Hayes said. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. "The vampire Empress just let you go? Out of the goodness of her heart?" "Not exactly," Jake said. He slid the 2 data devices across the table. "She sent a message, and she gave us information that could save thousands of lives." One of the other officers, General Patricia Cole, picked up the devices suspiciously. "This could be a trap, infected with viruses or tracking software." "It could be," Jake agreed, "but we need to check. If that information is real, we could mount rescue operations for every human prisoner in Sanguinar space." The officers exchanged glances. Hayes nodded to Cole, who left the room with the devices. She returned 20 minutes later with a tech specialist. "The data is clean," the tech specialist reported. "No viruses, no trackers, just pure information. And Admiral, if this is accurate, it's more intelligence than we've gathered in 2 years of war." Hayes leaned back in his chair. "Show me." They pulled up the data on a large screen. Jake watched as the officer's eyes widened. The information was incredibly detailed. Prisoner locations, guard schedules, ship vulnerabilities, everything they would need to plan successful rescue missions. "This is real," Cole said quietly. "This has to be real. We could never fake data this complete." "But why would she give it to us?" another officer asked. "What does she gain?" Jake took a deep breath. "That's where the second device comes in. She wants a ceasefire, a temporary stop to the fighting, a chance for both sides to talk." "Talk?" Hayes nearly shouted. "That monster has killed millions of our people and she wants to talk?" "She wants us to prove that we're worth more alive than dead," Jake said. "She wants us to show her that humanity deserves to be treated as equals, not conquered subjects." "And if we refuse?" Cole asked. "Then the war continues. More people die. Both sides keep killing each other until one side is gone." The room fell silent. Hayes stared at the data on the screen. Finally, he spoke. "Even if we wanted to consider this, the decision isn't ours to make. This goes all the way to the top. The President, the World Council, everyone." "I know," Jake said, "but we need to move fast. She's trusting us with this information. If we don't respond, she might see it as betrayal." Hayes stood up. "I'll make the calls. But Morrison, you need to understand something. A lot of people won't believe this. They'll think you were brainwashed or that this is an elaborate trap." "I know, sir, but I saw something in her. She's tired of the war. She's looking for a reason to stop it." "Then you better hope you're right," Hayes said. "Because if you're wrong, this could be the end of everything." The next 3 weeks were chaos. Jake gave briefings to dozens of different committees and councils. He told his story over and over again. Some people believed him. Most didn't. But the data on that device was impossible to ignore. Finally, a decision was made. Earth would use the information to mount rescue operations. At the same time, they would prepare a response to Valeria's proposal. And Jake would be the one to deliver it. Jake worked with a team of scientists, diplomats, and artists to create humanity's answer. They compiled everything that made humans special. History files showing both the beautiful and terrible things humans had done, music from every culture on Earth, literature spanning thousands of years, videos of ordinary people talking about their lives, their hopes, their dreams, but Jake added something more. He recorded a personal message to Valeria. In it, he explained why humans fought so hard, why they refused to give up, why they chose hope over despair. He talked about the short human lifespan and how that made every moment precious. He talked about love and family and the drive to leave something good behind. Most importantly, he told her the truth. He admitted that humans weren't perfect. They made mistakes. They hurt each other. They struggled with hate and fear. But they also tried to be better. They reached for the stars knowing they might fail. They sacrificed for strangers. They created beauty in the darkness. You asked me once why we fight the way we do, Jake said into the camera. It's because we know we're small and temporary and fragile, and that makes us brave. We know we'll die, so we try to make our lives matter. That's what you've lost, Empress. You've lived so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be desperate and afraid and still choose to hope. While the message was being prepared, rescue operations began. Using Valeria's data, human forces launched coordinated strikes on Sanguinar prison ships. In 1 week, they rescued over 3,000 prisoners. The operations were so successful that some military leaders wanted to press the advantage and attack the Sanguinar while they were confused. But Jake argued against it. That would be breaking faith with Valeria. She trusted us with that information. If we betray that trust, we lose any chance at peace. After much debate, the leaders agreed to honor the ceasefire proposal. At least for now, finally, the message was ready. Jake prepared to return to Sanguinar space. His crew volunteered to go with him, but he refused. This is my risk to take, he told them. If it's a trap, there's no point in all of us dying. Amy grabbed his arm. Sir, you don't have to do this alone. Yes, I do, Jake said gently. But thank you. For everything. The journey back took 8 days. Jake traveled in a small diplomatic ship, unarmed and clearly marked. He broadcast his identity and intentions on all frequencies. He was either about to make history or sail directly into his own execution. When he reached the coordinates Valeria had given him, her flagship was waiting. Jake's ship was pulled into the same shuttle bay where he had escaped weeks earlier. This time he walked out willingly. Valeria stood in the bay exactly where she had been when he left. It was like no time had passed at all. You came back, she said. She sounded surprised. I gave you my word, Jake replied. He held up a data storage device. I brought what you asked for. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Valeria walked forward and took the device from his hand. Her fingers brushed his, cold as ice. Come, she said. Let's see what humanity has to offer. They went to her private chambers. Valeria sat down and began reviewing the data. Jake watched as hours passed. She didn't speak. She just absorbed everything. The music, the art, the history, the personal stories. Finally, she reached Jake's personal message. He watched her face as she listened to his words. Something changed in her expression. The cold mask she always wore cracked slightly. When the message ended, she sat in silence for a long time. Jake waited. He had learned that Valeria thought carefully before speaking. You're right, she finally said. Her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. I have forgotten. I've lived so long that I stopped feeling the weight of time. Every day is the same as the one before. Nothing surprises me. Nothing moves me. Until I met you, she stood and walked to the window. I built an empire thinking I was bringing order to chaos, but I was really just spreading emptiness. Perfect, eternal emptiness. It's not too late to change, Jake said. Valeria turned to face him. Isn't it? I've been the tyrant for 2,000 years. I've conquered 47 worlds. I've ended billions of lives. How does someone come back from that? One step at a time, Jake said. One choice at a time. You chose to let me go. You chose to give us information to save our people. Those were good choices. Make more of them, and if my empire rebels, if my generals refuse to accept peace, then you deal with that when it comes. But you're the Empress. They'll follow your lead. Valeria was quiet again. Then she did something Jake never expected. She laughed. Not the mocking laugh from when he first woke up. This was different. Lighter somehow. You've changed me, Jake Morrison, she said. I'm not sure if I should thank you or curse you for it, but you've given me something I haven't felt in centuries. What's that curiosity about the future? For the first time in a very long time, I don't know what comes next. And that's terrifying. But it's also exciting. She walked to a control panel and pressed several buttons. Jake heard a tone echo through the ship. I'm calling a council meeting, Valeria explained. Tomorrow I will address my empire. I will declare a ceasefire with humanity. I will propose what I'm calling the Great Experiment. What experiment to see if chaos and order can exist together in the same galaxy? To see if your messy, beautiful humanity can coexist with my perfect, empty empire, and to see if both of us can learn from each other. Jake felt hope rising in his chest. You really mean it? You're going to stop the war. I'm going to try, Valeria said. There will be resistance. Some of my people won't accept it. But I'm tired, Jake. Tired of being the eternal conqueror. Maybe it's time to try being something else. She stepped closer to him. You'll need to stay here for a while. To help me convince my generals. They'll say.